Hello, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you to IEFT for organising this on our behalf. I'm Lucy from Oxford Brookes, and I work in our global office at the university. So some of you perhaps have met me on the road when I've been travelling in Turkey and attending different events. So hello to those of you if I have already met you, and welcome if I haven't met you in the past. Today, we're really excited to have our head of the School of Architecture, Matt Gaskin, who is going to be speaking to you a little bit more about our architecture programmes at the university. For those of you who may not know that much about Oxford Brookes, so we are a modern university, so we're less than 50 years old, and we're the #1 young university in the UK. So we have a very good reputation as a university. And we're particularly strong in areas such as the arts and technology. So this is why architecture is a programme that we really wanted to showcase to you today. And yeah, Oxford Brookes is a fantastic place to study. Oxford is a city of culture, of history, and it's also very modern, very close to London. So it's a really beautiful place to be. I'm going to not speak for any longer. I'm going to pass you straight over to Matt to talk a little bit more about architecture. But I will be here in the background. I'm going to be available to answer any questions you have. Maybe if you have some more general questions about life at the university or specific requirements or other questions, feel free to ask those to me. Otherwise, Matt will be able to talk to you a lot more about the architecture programmes. So over to you, Matt.
Right, hi everybody, my name's Matt Gaskin. As mentioned, I'm the head of the School of Architecture. I've entitled this talk Leading Design Architecture at Oxford Brookes. So I'm going to talk you through the Part 1 and the Part 2 programmes. Not too long actually, only 9 slides, so not bad. But if you could note your questions down, because at the minute I can only see the slide screen that I'm presenting to you, so I can't see your questions coming through on the chat, but we can talk verbally at the end of it as well. So if you can note your questions down as I go, I'm very happy to answer your questions once we get through it. Yeah, no, the School of Architecture is, if you like, it's been in existence for quite some time. So it's actually, although the university is 50 years old, the architecture school itself has actually been in existence since 1927. So we're not far away from a 100-year century of being in existence, so 2027. In the school, we have courses, particularly the architecture courses, that are accredited by the RIBA, so the Royal Institute of British Architects, the Architecture Registration Board, the ARB. But in addition to that, we also have something quite unusual. We're also accredited by the Malaysian Board of Architecture, and as far as I know, the last time I checked, we're the only one that's affiliated to the North American. It doesn't mean we're validated by them, but it means we're affiliated to them, which we're just exploring, maybe having validation for North America as well. We rank particularly well as a school in the QS World Rankings. We've been in the top 50. We're slightly just outside the top 50 at the minute. So in the scheme of things, as a school, we really are kind of one of the top schools of architecture in the UK and arguably in the world. So we're also number 8 in the Guardian League table, which is a UK university list, which is also very important for the home students to reference to. But we also have a strong record in the RIBA President's Medals, which is, if you don't know about those, which you probably do, I would have thought, is the RIBA President's Medals is probably the foremost educational award for students of architecture in the world. And every school that's affiliated to the RIBA or validated, because the RIBA validate globally, can actually submit students to that. And we've done particularly well in that in the last sort of 10 to 15 years. We won the Sargent's Award about four years ago for drawing. And so every school basically is the best students in the world, probably about the best 8 students in the world out of hundreds, if not thousands. So that's a way of gauging the kind of work we're doing as well. I thought I'd start by just kind of very briefly talking about BA Orders in Architecture course overview. The idea of today is to give you a brief overview, and then you're welcome to hit our websites and then maybe follow up with further questions or in discussions through the inquiry system to try and find out a bit more if this appeals to you. So the Part 1 qualification we run is a BA Honours in Architecture, and again accredited by RIBA, ARB and the LAM. in terms of the undergraduate, the BA Honours in Architecture, we run something slightly different to norm with normal schools. So we do adopt a year system in year one. So in year one, we tend to get you guys together, do some big live projects together. By live projects, we mean working with live clients in Oxford, mainly with the local community. And we'll get you to build actually something in year one. So the idea in year one is to unpack you, is to try and realize what kind of things you're interested in and kind of make that transition between school or higher education and moving into kind of, if you like, the higher education stroke further education. So that transition to university. And then once you've successfully gone through year one, we then moved you into what we call vertical units, which is we sit you all down in a big lecture theatre. All the 11 what we call vertical units present, design studio units, and then you vote for all 11, you give a reason why. And basically these units are a mixture of second year students taught with third year students. So the idea is the third year students kind of work with the second year students in order to bring them to a higher level. The third year students that are really fantastic take the whole unit to a higher level. But the most important thing about this system is it offers you choice. One thing that I'm very keen on within the school is that students take responsibility and actually have a say in the kind of things they're doing. So hence why the talk was called Leading, because we are training leaders. We are training people that take the initiative, if you like. So not leading big firms or anything like that. If that's what you want to do, fine. But in the main, the leading's being used in order to say that we're going to allow you to be yourself and follow your own trajectory, because there's thousands, if not millions, of ways to be an architect in terms of the design approach and all that kind of thing. So it has to be an individual focus for me. The design studios themselves are taught by some of the brightest designers and tutors in the country. So most of our tutors come up from London. They're usually in design practice. So about 88% of the staff in the school are actually practicing architects as well. So there's a kind of currency thing there. You're getting people that are actually on the cutting edge of actual practice in architecture as well. We'll also look at your design thinking skills and production, and we'll raise this to the highest possible standards. Again, we're educating future leaders, and the main thing to take away from this across part one and part two of the undergraduate and postgraduate courses, its individual character and ambition is absolutely vital. We don't want you to pretend to leave something behind and come to us and become something else. We want you to bring yourself with you, which I'll talk a bit more about later on. The other thing we offer every year is field trips. Obviously, that will be a challenge next year, current condition, but sure, it's a challenge we'll overcome as normal. You'll be offered a field trip every year. They're not compulsory, but the idea is you can't learn about architecture just by staying in the building. You have to get out and about as well. So that's a kind of brief overview of the BA Honours in Architecture course. The part two course is slightly different, this is a truly master's course. Some master's courses for architecture, the postgraduate courses, actually sort of are an extension of undergraduate courses, and so you do more of the same kind of work. We don't do that. We offer a truly master's course split across 2 years. Again, qualification is accredited by the RIBA, IRB and LAM. But what we have is we have 6 specializations in year one of the master's course, and 8 design studios in the second year of master's course. Again, the ethos is the same as undergraduate, but this time it's not a question about whether or not you're going to be an architect. It's actually, you're now, if you get the undergraduate degree, you're going to be an architect then. What kind of architect would you like to become? So we offer 6 specialist strands, which I've listed down here on the slide, all of which you get a presentation on each of these specialist learnings, and then you choose the one you want to do. And that's for the first year. Alongside that, we'll be teaching about research techniques, about management practice and law for the UK, and representation. Then, all being well, you successfully pass into the second year, which is a bit more, if you've already got a degree in architecture, which I'm assuming some people on the line already do, then you kind of know about design studio. Again, sit you down in a lecture theatre. There's 8 design studios. They all present to you. You vote for all 8, giving your first choice your 8th. You usually get your first or your second choice there. So it means you're motivated towards the agenda of that studio. Some of the studios can be quite tectonic. Some can be quite conceptual. But there's also in that list of studios, there's DS5 with Design Studio 5, which allow you to bring on your own brief and do your own thing. Now, in those terms, if you look at the list just above that in terms of the specialisms, there's also a specialist route called research-led design. That will also allow you to do something that you're interested in that maybe doesn't align with the other 5 specializations. You can pursue your own idea along with our support for a year, and in the next year you could do your own design briefs for a year if you wish. My intention when I designed this program was that you would connect the 2 years, but again, I've given responsibility and choice to the students, and they tend to vote on doing something different in 1 year to the next year, which is also fine. So it's basically, we want you to decide on what you want to be and how you're going to get there, because architecture is lots of things to many people. The facilities, on the right-hand side here of the slide, you'll see that that's our Abercrombie building. Open studios, there's no separation between undergraduate and postgraduate. We mix the studios together. So actually the postgraduate studio will sit next to an undergraduate studio. And there's a real open kind of design culture feel to the whole building. It's incredibly busy and active every day of the week pretty well. There's access to the workspaces is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The idea is not to get you to work 24 hours a day or 7 days a week, but our students live roughly about 15, 20 minutes from the facilities. So that means that you can actually leave your work up or leave your space. Obviously, you wouldn't leave your laptop in the space, but you could leave a presence of your work in the studio, go home, switch off, have some dinner, go to sleep, come up in the morning, then resume work in the studio. So we're trying to run it almost in replica to a professional office. There's the building itself is award-winning, as is the building that sits beyond that slide, which is the library facility. The whole building was designed by Design Engine, which was one of our tutors on the postgraduate side, who had to give up being a tutor because they won these large commissions. So that was good. But the studios have been designed around people who understand what we're trying to achieve in the teaching. So the ethos of teaching runs right the way through the studio. We renewed our computers last September. So we have 112 high-end computers, which are by far and away the fastest things in the university, and all the software is bang up to date. We use Rhino primarily. We use the Adobe suite, obviously, but we've also got 3D Studio Max, AutoCAD, Revit, and things like that running. We're not particularly focused on teaching you computer skills. The idea is that what you do is you work in a way that suits you. We have a module in the undergraduate program that will teach you the computer skills yourself, but actually we found the best way to do it is to actually offer units that are a bit more computer focused or a bit less computer focused, so you can vote for that. It would be crazy not to learn some kind of computer software while you're studying at undergraduate level, and then postgraduate level, the gloves are off. You can work in any way you deem fit. We have a print room, which a guy called Marcello runs. We have the fastest printer in Europe that will produce 13 A1 prints a minute. Marcello also does a check across the whole of the UK to see what other schools of architecture are charging for their prints, and ours is about half the price of most schools of architecture. On top of that, he will give out photographic equipment. He has a laser scanning piece of equipment in the room as well. There are 8 to 10 maker bots in his space, along with a gel maker bot, which is a 3D printer. If you're not used to calling them a maker bot, I seem to call them maker bots for some reason. I don't know why. In addition to that, we have a workshop. The workshop, you do a 1-hour induction, then you can use all the facilities. The idea of the workshop is, again, it's got 8 to 10 3D printers in. It's got 3 laser cutters that you book a slot on, as you normally understand. There's no charge for using the laser cutter in terms of time, as some schools do. All you need is a file, piece of material, and then you book a slot, and then you can cut your model out from that. The weird thing is that we have studio kitchens, which is a bit weird because we share studio kitchens on the 3rd and 4th floor of the Abercrombie right-hand corner, right-hand photograph, sorry, at the top, is at the end of that row, if you like, on the right-hand side, there's a kitchen with it has a fridge, 2 microwaves, and a hot and cold water running machine, and is just the best thing. We pay a couple of students, well, I pay a couple of students out of the school's budgets to keep the the fridge and things in decent nick, and it works beautifully. So actually you can make a cup of tea, which you can then sit at your work. You can make a model, do a sketch, use a computer and have a cup of tea and a sandwich all at the same time. And it's also quite a focal point for undergraduate, postgraduate students to kind of communicate and share. So as you can see in the image at the top right, the idea of the school is to be open, transparent and honest. That's basically what Brookes is about, is if you've got an issue, I want you to come and talk to me straight away and kind of ask me about it. Dynamic and vibrant students. We also have an ability to work in virtual reality as well. Course content, 4 key things is we will focus on getting an in-depth knowledge. So it's not just going to be a kind of covering all the bases quickly. We will expect you to actually achieve an in-depth knowledge of an architecture important field of study, be that technology, cultural context, or whatever it might be. And then we need you to apply this knowledge into design. So the idea is to unlock your enjoyment of things as we work you through the course, both undergraduate and postgraduate. So if you're not enjoying something, it's because we're not helping you to look at it the right way. You're being challenged to incorporate a broad range of complex cultural, aesthetic, research and technical factors into your major design projects and portfolio. The whole course, right the way through, is we don't see it in a year isolated course. It's a build up to an endpoint. The endpoint on both the undergraduate and the postgraduate courses is your portfolio that you will then take out in order to get yourself the best possible job. You will synthesize this, as I put, the cultural context, which is history and theory by another name. Management practice and law will teach you about that in terms of the English and Welsh law and about planning permissions, things like that. And then the technology is technology in fluid form. So actually to understand technology before it becomes, if you like, standardized brick size, window opening size and doorways. And the number one thing for me is we'll evolve and define an individual design position. That's key. And that's what will drive you forward right the way through your career, really. Assessment, I put a little bit in here because I thought the assessment's important, is that we don't run any written examinations in the course at all. For me, the best way for architects to learn is by continuous feedback and assessment as you work through the year and producing projects and discussing it with your design tutors. So the key thing is you need to pass all the components in order to satisfy the criteria for the RIBA, ARB and LAM. And then all that assessment builds to something bigger, which is the end of year exhibition. We have a big end of year exhibition in Oxford. This year we're going to have to do it virtually, but normally we would do it in the school and in the building that I've just shown you in the ground floor and on the top 2 floors. And we have a big party, really, off the record. We have a big party and celebration of every year presents in that exhibition. Unfortunately, this year we'll just be doing the graduating students, but we'll send you an invite to that if you're interested in the programs. After you graduate is that we have students and graduates, sorry, not students, graduates by that point, in the best practice in the world. We have students in Foster's, Rogers, Big, Herzog and de Muren, all over the world. They're all on every single corner of the world. They're in China, Hong Kong, everywhere. So the idea for me is we're not training you to work in the UK. We're training you to work on a global stage as a global profession. And the idea is that you could have some really good fun by that. Obviously, once we get over these conditions now, I think we'll start traveling again. And then most of the projects you work on, if you go and work for a large practice, will probably be based in the Far East, to a certain extent on the Middle East at the moment. Smaller practice, then a bit more localized. So it's up to you, but be ambitious. We have students, like I say, in the best practices on the planet. How to apply this is some of the questions I'm happy to answer. Is a part 1, you submit a digital portfolio, and then you possibly might have an interview. Sometimes we just make an offer of some sort, or the worst case scenario is we don't make you an offer. Alongside that, we'll ask you for a personal statement and to tell us what grades you're predicted to get in your studies. Sometimes an IELTS exam test for English language is also necessary. For the part 2, if you hold a equivalence of a 2-2 or have a 2-2 in an undergraduate honours degree in the UK or something like that, that's fine. But it doesn't have to be in architecture. We're flexible. It can be the discipline relevant to architecture. If you possess your professional background experience, design and architecture, also we can also look at that. So again, you worked in a discipline that's strong relationship or similarities to architecture. Again, you'll submit a digital portfolio, but this time you will have an interview. You will have an interview normally by Skype if you can't get to the UK, because we actually want to make sure that we are off choosing you, but you also need to get a chance to ask your questions and choose us. Again, IELTS is on that. I'll probably say a bit more about the portfolio once we come to questions if anybody wants, so you're welcome to ask me questions on that. But what we want to see is a range of work, and the thing I wanted to say was actually your personality, so don't forget to be you in your portfolio. And that was the end of the slideshow. I don't know how long I took. Hopefully that was reasonably brief and to the point. Wow, I'm looking now, there's a lot of questions. Lucy, are you still there? Yeah, Lucy, how do you want to do this? Will we just read the questions out and answer them? I don't know. I couldn't see the questions coming in. So
there's a few questions that we've already covered, but we've got a few that we're saving for you to answer. So the first one is, let's have a look. So the first one is asking, will this program give us a national certificate? That's from Melikana. Sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong. So I'm not sure if that question is related to a specific architectural professional qualification, or if it's an academic question.
I'd only be guessing here, but maybe if I answer it, and then if I don't give you the right answer, then maybe you can let me know. Is that I think the main thing we get with architecture is that people want to have their professional body's accreditation or validation or prescription. You will obviously get you'll get a certificate from Brookes if you pass the degree or the part 2, the masters. But then in addition to that, if you pass the undergraduate degree or pass the masters, you automatically get given the ARB, the RIBA, and the LAM Part 1 with the undergraduate, or the ARB, the RIBA, and the LAM Part 2 with the masters. You don't have to do a separate exam in order to gain that, as you do in some countries. I mean, obviously, the one of the main things is the reason we did the LAM accreditation is because we wanted the students not to have to sit a separate exam when they went back to Malaysia. So they actually, they're recognised, our awards are recognised by the professional board in Malaysia, which helps them work their way to be a registered architect in their own country. There's also a little bit of confusion sometimes about whether you can't get ARB prescription of a course outside of the United Kingdom at the present time. So if you think if you're coming to the Part 2 course and you think you've got ARB Part 1, chances are, unless you studied in the UK, the chances are you haven't got that. You've maybe got the RIBA Part 1. We do not insist that you have the Part 1 in order to join us on the Part 2. If you don't have the Part 1 before you join us in the Part 2, it will not stop you getting the full award. You can basically gain the Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 award to be a registered architect in UK in any order now. They changed the rules in February 2011. So you can get the Part 2, then go and get the Part 1, and then go and get the Part 3 to be a registered architect. Hopefully that answers it.
Thank you. Let us know in the chat if that answers the question, and we'll follow up. I just wonder from there if it might be useful just to talk a little bit about what the qualification process would be for a student who comes with, say, a Turkish degree already. So since our students are coming from Turkey, if they've already taken a degree in architecture that doesn't have any form of accreditation at the moment, and they come onto our Part 2 by the MArchD Part 2 program, what would a qualification process for them look like in order to then qualify within the UK?
Well, what would happen was they would make an application to the Central University in Brookes, and then the admissions team would look at the equivalence of what you've done on your qualification to what we're asking for in architecture. Then they'll put that on an admissions system, and then I'll look at it. I tend to look at almost 95% of the Part 2 applications. all being well and equivalent, we would then offer you a place. Now, once that's done, and supposing you don't have the Part 1 ARB or RIB or anything like that, well, you would join us on the course, all being well, and mainly it's down to the portfolio. But then if you wish to actually pursue the ARB Part 1 while you're studying with us, what I do is I hold a session every March for an hour, just to brief people on this, and I'll take you through what's called the ARB prescribed examination, which you can take as an individual in order to gain the Part 1. And you can use all the work you produce for us for the Part 2 to use that to apply for the Part 1. And to be honest, I mean, I usually run with about 12 or 15 students turn up for that briefing every March, and then probably about 4 actually go ahead and prepare for the examination with me. But you're not gaining it as a collective, you're gaining it as an individual. But if you do not want to practice as an architect in the UK, you do not need to get that Part 1. You can just continue on. Mainly people are interested in getting the Part 1 because they want to stay in the UK and get the Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 and become a registered architect. But on top of that is also that you won't be able to do that unless you've got unless you convert your visa as well. So you'll be on a student visa, and then your visa would have to change in order for you to work in the UK. So if you wanted to work in the UK, you would have to, what we try and do is actually understand understand what you want to do. And then if you want to work in the UK, we'd try and line you up to work for a bigger firm, such as Foster's or somebody. We wouldn't get you the job, but we would encourage you to apply to them because they're large enough in order to be able to sponsor international students to stay in the UK to work.
Thank you. So we have a couple more questions. One of them is about the decision process. And I think perhaps if we come to that one in a second, because I think you'll probably have a few questions around portfolio and decisions. And the other one is about the slide that you did on MArch. So the first slide on MArch, what's the difference between 6 units and the 8 units stated?
Well, on the MArch, in year 1, you've got the 6 specializations, and in year 2, you've got the 8 design units. The 6 specializations, now you notice I'm not calling them design units. The 6 specializations offer you a chance to become a Part 2 registered architect, but with an added specialist knowledge. So you can either do urban design, sustainability, development emergency practice, which is quite unique to us. It's a course that actually teaches you how to design architecture in earthquake zones and tsunami areas. So we work quite strongly with Save the Children and International Federation of the Red Cross on some of the work we do. You've then got the other areas such as advanced architectural design, which is dealing with more conceptual design work. Then you've got a course called IARD, which is International Architecture Regeneration Development. It's all right, we're going to change the acronym for that. It's a bit long. That's the one I teach on. That's about regenerating kind of industrial buildings or buildings that have come out of use or partial use. But what you are getting is that you're getting specialist knowledge. You're not just learning about how to design there. You are actually in general terms, the first semester is about understanding theory. And then the second semester of the first year of the Part 2 is applying that theory into a live design project. The other thing that first year of the MRD does is you're actually linking to some of the live projects we run in our research groups. So we have 5 research groups in the school, and we deal with we're particularly strong in the development emergency practice area. We're also extremely strong and well renowned for sustainability, post-occupancy evaluation and carbon zero. And on top of that, engineering and building physics, that kind of area. The idea there is that you pick up a specialist knowledge. And like I said, 5 of those are very kind of set: urban design, sustainability, these kind of things. And then one of them, research-led design, is if none of those 5 specializations quite fit with your aspirations, then you can offer up your own specialist area to work on for a year under the research-led design. Hopefully that clears it up. And then the 8 design units are more what you kind of know if you've done a Part 1, where you concentrate on doing design projects for a year rather than picking up additional specialist skill. So you're applying and synthesizing your skills more in design studios. And all the design studios will present their design agenda, their approach to technology, their philosophical position on technology and that kind of thing. So the idea is that they kind of complement the years, but you're getting part 2 in architecture with a specialist knowledge on top of that. Not that it's recognized in your award, but actually you're taking that, it'll be present in your portfolio when you go for a job. What else we got?
Thank you. Let's have a look at the other questions. Can you see the questions now? We have a question on the decision process, as I mentioned before, and we also have a question about the any internships, apprenticeships. Perhaps it would be a good time to talk about any opportunity for live projects or professional practice, any experience that students get through the program.
Well, let's talk about the live projects thing. Permeates right the way through the school. I mean, it was something that we used to do in the first year of undergraduate till about 9 years ago, and then we were doing live projects internationally, but nothing locally. So we felt like basically 9 years ago is when I became head of school, so that's why it kind of shifted. But the live projects you would get involved with in the first year of the part 2 are the ones to do with live research projects. So we would either link you to a research project or simulate a research project that we maybe have a shorter time frame to deliver on. So, for instance, we're doing a major project in India for assessing, trying to come up with the sustainable code for sustainable homes in India for the Indian government. That's one of the projects. We've just sent it in. It's about to be published as an entire set of articles and positions on how to regenerate existing buildings through that regeneration project. And that's based on doing live projects. We've been to Valencia, Riga in Croatia. We've been to Norwich in the UK, which was one of the things here. And this year we're in Cork in Southern Ireland. So it's actually trying to base it on a live scenario. So you're actually gaining professional skills. Because one of the big shifts in architecture in the UK, not sure about where you guys are in Turkey, is that we have to involve ourselves with public participation and listening to the public that will use the building, not just a client now. So we need to train students in techniques to do with that as well. So that's how the live projects works. In the undergraduate, you'll all do a live project in the first year of undergraduate. And then in addition to that, we have 2 or 3 units that do live projects. One of the major live projects we've done is to actually we bid for and got £100,000, and the students in the undergraduate are actually building a building up at the John Radcliffe Hospital, which is one of the major research and hospitals in the world, that actually sits about 10-minute, 15-minute walk from us. And the trust there gave us £100,000 to build it's a fully sustainable enterprise hub for their trust up there. So those are the kind of things we do. We've also done a live build in Morocco over the summer, things like that. There's no set way of doing these things. Some of the best ideas in the school come from students knocking on the door, coming through the door and asking me, what if? So we've even done a sustainable build in a local allotment just over the road, where 3 students built a sustainable toilet for the local allotments, which is kind of just little bits of land where people grow their own vegetables, which you rate on the council, and they wanted a sustainable toilet, so they asked us, they designed it and built it, those kind of things. So yeah, that's where the students and the staff come in. It's a collaboration between the both of us in order to get the best out of the learning and the best out of the time we have together. What else we got? Yeah. Did I miss one there? What did I have to cover? The decision making
on just the decision process
for applications, you mean? Yeah. Okay.
The portfolio, I would guess, as well.
The portfolio, yeah. Okay, I'll cover the portfolio then. I'll start with the undergraduate one, but if you're doing the part 2, keep this in mind as well. So listen to this as well, because the key thing we have is we have people that write personal statements about why they want to come to Brookes, and when they take examinations to start the undergraduate. Those are very important, but the most important bit of the part 1 and the part 2 application process is the portfolio. So what we'll do is we'll get you to submit a 12 to 15 page digital portfolio as part of your application. You can apply before you've got that ready, and then we'll wait until that gets uploaded. We tend to use a piece of software called Carbon Made that you can utilize. And then what happens after that is for the undergraduate, we will look at that and make a decision along with your personal statement, your predicted grades, on whether or not we're going to make you an offer. So there's 3 things that will end up in order to make a decision about you for undergraduate. Will either not make you an offer, make you an offer, or invite you to interview. Now, being invited to interview doesn't mean that anything at all. It just means that we've selected you because either you've got a fantastic portfolio and your personal statement doesn't quite align with that. So we want to make sure you're coming to us for the right reasons, or that you've said something in your personal statement that doesn't quite align with your portfolio. There's lots of reasons. So it's just, we want to meet you, have a chat with you, see what you're thinking, what makes you tick, that kind of thing. With the portfolio for undergraduate, what you need to do is to show that you're not afraid to use a range of different media. It can cover lots of things. So we've had portfolios that have used paint, pastel, watercolor, sketches, charcoal, making models, making videos. Even a guy once came in and played his bass guitar in an interview as part of the process. So it's really, it varies what you can be. The key thing to me is make sure that you include what makes you tick, not what your parents think makes you tick, or your brother or sister or your art teacher. If there's a piece of work you really love, put it in the portfolio. But again, be aware that it's usually about 12, 15 pages what we offer. But show also that you're not afraid to try something that you've never tried before, or you're not happy or not comfortable with. That's fine. That's part of the plan, really. And also try and include sketchbooks, because sometimes your sketchbooks can actually be one of the reasons why we make an offer. For the part 2, obviously it's slightly different because you have a degree in architecture. We want to see your final project or your final year of your degree, and also your practice work. So if you've done any practice work, we want to see that as well. In addition to all that, we want to see a bit of you, what makes you tick. So that varies sometimes. I mean, some people run furniture design companies as well as being an architect. One guy, Andy, that we had, actually made shoes that as a sideline business, which he didn't talk about in the interview, and then it got revealed in the interview, which kind of like, well, that makes a huge difference. If you're doing something that motivates you personally, we want to know about that, because that's the kind of thing we want to dig into and work with you on when you come to us. So it's the part 2 as well. Personal statement's quite important, but we will be holding an interview with you, and the interview will normally be with myself, or there's 2 other members of staff do it. They last about 25 minutes, half an hour. You submit a digital portfolio beforehand, and then we just have a conversation about your portfolio. Make sure that you're coming to us for the right reasons. You've researched the course. Because the other thing is we get overwhelmed with applications. So the idea is to make sure we try and do our work at the front end to make sure that if you're coming to us, that you know what you're coming for, and you've got the right kind of approach that we encourage in the school, because every single school of architecture slightly differs in the way they approach things. So it's to make sure that you're going to be happy here and that you've got everything you need. But we are very good, extremely good at working with individual students. We're not dealing with trying to mass produce architects. We want you to have a portfolio that represents your own approach. So that's the first phase of that, is obviously to gauge you when you come onto the program. Hopefully that answers it.
Great, thank you. I think I can't see any other questions at the moment that are coming in. Does anyone have any questions? They can either be about the course, about architecture, or they can be about the university in general. If you have some more questions about that, we're happy to answer any of those questions. Perhaps in the meantime, perhaps you could talk a little bit more about careers and any kind of support that the School of Architecture or any the School of Architecture has with employers.
Thanks, Lucy. I missed that bit out, didn't I? Well, the school is extremely well linked to the RIBA. the RIBA local region, RBA kind of has representative regions all across the UK. We're linked to the Southeast region because that's the region we're in. And as part of that, for the third year undergraduate students, they're offered, it's voluntary, you don't have to do this, is that we have a thing called the RIBA mentoring scheme, which is that students in the beginning of their third year can vote to be part of this scheme. And then what we'll do is we'll put 2 third-year students with an architectural firm or an architect. The architects are locally based, but also London-based architects. And we placed about 68 students. And what you do is you go out and visit their office 3 days of the year. Usually the first visit is to see how the practice runs. The next visit is to get involved with one of the projects within the practice. And hopefully the third visit is to actually see something of the practice on site, so to see a building actually happening on site. But it varies depending on what stages of projects they've got in the building. On top of that is that we obviously have the end of year exhibition, which is key, but we also have a LinkedIn site where we advertise jobs, or we get firms to advertise jobs on board there. But the main thing is the end of year exhibition is we really do have students in the best practice in the world. So it's not as though I'm struggling to get people to be interested in our graduates. They're very interested in our graduates, even to the point of I'm usually contacted, as I have been this year again in February, March, with employers asking me who are your best students that are coming through this year and who should I be looking for. And that goes across the board. It's one of the reasons why we have 38 student prizes in the school, because I don't give them free access to you guys. If they want to get to you guys early, they have to give us some money, which we then turn into a student prize, which then hopefully one of you will win. The other thing I do is that I have 2 one-hour open door sessions every week of the semesters. I've been doing that for 7 years. All members of staff do it now, but I've been doing it for 7 years. And in those sessions, mainly in January, February, March, is that people come to me and ask me about, do I have a contact in that practice or this practice? And then what I tend to do is say, like, well, bring me your CV and things. So we kind of run an up-to-date thing there. But quite a lot of our tutors also come from very established practices. So we've got a guy called Mickey who works for Thomas Heatherwick. We've got people that are connected into Grimshaw's office. Peter, who still works for Foster's and comes and works for us 2 days a week. So we have links with the best practices, Make Architects, Chipperfields, like I said, Big, stuff like that. So all the kind of major names are there. The other thing on top of that is that Oxford's known for having very significant historic architecture. It actually has some of the best modern architecture in the UK, but you just wouldn't know it because it's hidden behind the walls of the university. So there's a Zaha Hadid building in Oxford. There's a Herzog and de Muir building in Oxford. There's also the only Arne Jacobsen building in the UK at St Catherine's College. So, and Wilkinson Eyre are there, all that kind of stuff. So we do know lots and lots of architects throughout the world as well. So we've got students, like I said, all over the world. A couple of practices that are in Beijing, Singapore, Shanghai as well. Hong Kong's a real big area that's kind of recruiting students at the minute, and also North America. And the other place I'm trying to build up major links with is kind of South America. So Mexico's good, but I'm trying to work on Argentina, Brazil, which we've done some projects in, things like that, try and widen the scope of where you guys can go and also where I get to go is a bit of a jolly.
Matt, I'm sorry to disturb, but we are almost over. Do you want to add something as a last sentence?
Well, I think myself and Lucy would just say thank you for attending. And if you do have any other questions, then come through our kind of, I'm not sure, Lucy, what would be directed to, but we're more than happy to answer any questions you've got.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple of links that I've put in the chat as well. So I've put a link for the page to the School of Architecture, so you can see both the bachelor degree and the master's degrees there, a little bit of extra information about the school. I've also put a link to our alternative English qualifications. I know there were a few questions around what we could accept for English. There's a link to our virtual campus tour. So you can actually now see our campus online if you follow the link to the virtual campus tour. And that's a really good resource to use. I would recommend that. And then lastly, my email. So I'm going to put it again there. But if you want to take down my email address as the primary contact, and then I can put you in touch perhaps with Matt, that probably would be the best solution. So if you do have further questions, then feel free to contact me. Let me check that's right. So it's lnorris@brookes.ac.uk. So feel free to drop me an email, and I can connect you with Matt, and we can answer any very specific questions you might have.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lucy and Matt. It was a great presentation. Thanks for participating.
Thanks, Lucy. All right. See you guys. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.